and it was a relative that had found him because they were gonna go to Friday prayer, and he was like, where is he? You know, literally had to jump in and break into like a window and found him in that state, basically to see if the what was in his brain was cancerous or not. So this is going to be a very hard video for me to shoot. I should have shot it years ago, but I don't think I was emotionally ready to shoot the video and really talk about these things. So now 7 years later, I think I'm ready, but it's still like always going to be an emotional thing for me to talk about. So this is going to be a video to all the people that have lost somebody, in particular a parent, due to anything, you know. It can be like an immediate kind of thing. It can be like due to illness, because what we know that is death is inevitable and everybody's going to die one day. But you know, a lot of times we think, oh, I'm gonna live to be 100 and I'm gonna have children and great-grandchildren and so on and so forth, and I'm gonna build a mansion and I'm going to do this and I'm going to do, you know, we plan, but you know, Allah, God is the best, you know, at planning, so we don't really know. He's the all-knowing, right? So there's a saying in Hausa. It says kana naka Allah na nashi, right? So you're doing your plans, you're like, oh, this is gonna happen, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna do that, but Allah is planning as well. So you know, however you plan, at the end of the day, it's gonna be Allah's plan, right? A few years ago, my dad, he was working back and forth from Nigeria to the United States. You know, he would work there for a few months, come, you know, to us. We would go visit, you know. So we used to live in Nigeria and then we have moved to America. So it was like kind of like, you know, he was going back and forth. Like a lot of families are set up like that, you know, have ties to Nigeria. You know, there's always that like willing to go back, that connection to home, you know. So one of the times he was there, you know, he would talk to my mom every single day, and so one day he didn't call her, and she was starting to like worry, like, wow, he didn't call me. But then she was like, okay, it's okay, maybe he had a busy day, you know. And then she tried calling him and he wasn't answering, so she started to get a little concerned. One of my uncles decided to call my mom and tell her there's been an accident and that my dad had taken a fall in the bathroom. And so she said, what kind of fall, you know, what's going on? And they said, well, you know, it was a bad fall, but like has medicine being pumped into his system, so he can't really talk, whatever, but he's fine, it's okay. So Hausa culture, we have a lot of this like wanting to show things are fine even when they're not. Sometimes it's just like, okay, just tell me how it is, you know. But it's like the so eat, it's better, you know, people like to say that. So he my uncle, so another relative decided to call my mom and tell her that it's actually very serious. So, you know, when they said that, my mom was like telling us, so we're trying to come up with like, okay, what could possibly happen? Did he have a stroke? You know, I mean, he was in his late 40s at the time, so we're like, maybe it's a stroke, maybe, you know, like just possible things that it could be. So anyways, one of another relative, he calls me and he said, okay, like literally this is very serious. He's essentially in a coma. He's in a coma state, he's in the hospital, and you need to come as soon as possible because you never know, that could be the last thing, like that could have been it, you know. So my mom immediately books a ticket, boom, she's gone, you know. Me and my brother were like old enough, you know, like was I 20? I might have been 20 at the time, or maybe 19, but you know, we're like teenagers, so we're able to like, so yeah, me and my brother, you know, were able to kind of like, you know, take care of things at the house, you know, while my mom goes over there, you know, to really see what is going on, you know. So she gets there and, you know, he is in that coma state. And so they explained to her really what had happened was he had taken a fall, or assumed taking a fall in the bathroom. And then due to the fall, like, you know, he was bleeding, but thankfully the blood pooled and made a clot so that he didn't bleed out, right? And it was a relative that had found him because they were going to go to Friday prayer, and he was like, where is he? You know, literally had to jump in and break into like a window and found him in that state. So later on what we found out was that he had a seizure. And so my dad had later on been diagnosed with glioblastoma, stage 4 brain cancer. And in the late stages of brain cancer, you actually have seizures. That's one of the symptoms. So later on, that's what we found out, was that he had a seizure and then fell and nobody was there, and, you know, essentially he went into this coma state. And yeah, so that's what happened then. So they were doing scans, and they did a brain scan, and they said that there was something there. I don't know what kind of brain scan they did. I don't really know. I know there's like MRIs and CAT scans, and anyways, I don't know what it was, but it wasn't like a big one. It was just like to see, okay, was there something there? So they said yes, there was something there, but they can't tell what it was, you know. So he had something in his brain. So you know, my mom and him, they come back to the US, you know, doctor's visits, all this. I forgot to mention that at the time, so after he had that first seizure, he had this thing called aphasia, where he would say a word, but it wasn't what he really wanted to say. You know, like even like he could recognize people's faces, but then he would get like the name wrong, like stuff like that, right? So that's when we knew something was connected to the brain that was, you know, having an issue. So they came back, did the scans, everything. He had a few more seizures before we fully got a diagnosis, but they essentially did a biopsy. I think autopsy is when a person is not alive anymore. Biopsy is when you're still living. Autopsy, same as post-mortem, the dead body is anyway, yes, so it was a biopsy. He was still alive. So they took samples of his, you know, of his brain, and to see if what he had was a malignant tumor, or it was I forgot the other term. Wow, I should have prepared. Whatever, it's alright. So anyways, basically to see if the what was in his brain was cancerous or not. It ended up being cancerous. And I remember we were all sitting like in this room, and like this doctor, the brain surgeon, he came and he told us, yes, so he does have cancer. And because we were working with a brain surgeon, and oncologist is the doctor that, you know, deals with cancer, and so he created the treatment plan. So he essentially said that my dad would have to go through radiation and chemo at the same time. I think the radiation was more frequent. No, chemo was literally like every day. Radiation was like every 6 weeks or something like that. It was a rigorous treatment. Like, it really affected him a lot. Like, it was hard seeing him go through that. You know, anybody that knows anybody that has gone through cancer, you know, or they themselves, you know, knows what I'm talking about. So yeah, it was a lot. And so yeah, so we you know, we were with him through this treatment, and we would be with him, take turns like going to chemo appointments with him. And then on top of that, he was getting the seizures, like I would say once a month, or maybe every 2 months. I think it was every 2 months at first. He would have a seizure attack, and he would have to end up back in the hospital again for about 2 weeks. So, you know, whenever that would happen, and he was still taking anti-seizure meds. Even though he was taking anti-seizure meds, the seizures were happening like that. So when he would have a seizure, we'd be back in the hospital, the ICU, and then he would be moved into a room, monitored for treatment. 2 weeks later, they say, oh, he's good, go back home, yada yada. Same thing. So chemo, seizure, this, you know. On top of that, he, after that first fall, his words, essentially sometimes they would go back to normal, and then a lot of times he would have the aphasia thing, you know, mixing up the words. So the reason for this is his tumor was actually where his speech area of the brain is, and so that's where it affected him the most. And you know, as you know, we're going through this, there was a time that the tumor had shrunk, and we were so happy and we were so hopeful. And you know, a lot of people, like our family from Nigeria, would come, take turns, stay with him, you know, and you know, may Allah reward them for that, you know, till the end of their time. Like, they're gonna have the reward of, you know, helping out with that, because taking care of somebody that's sick is actually a really good thing. And you know, it's like you get a lot of rewards from God, and it's like, you know, it's cleansing to a person's soul. So you know, and like even my family from my mom's side too, everybody, literally, like the community just came together, and like amazing. People would drop off food, people would stay with him. On top of this, our family, me and my brother were in college at the time. We were going to college. You know, my younger siblings, like one is in high school, the other ones, you know, elementary. So like there's just a lot going on, and like, you know, we still had to continue with our lives while going through this. One thing my mom did was she ended up taking off. She could take off like a whole time, you know, for like an illness of somebody in the family, or for their own, like, I forget what the term is, but essentially, you know, they could take off just to like take care of a loved one. So she essentially did that, and you know, we were all like still going to school or whatever. But there was a time, I remember, I just couldn't. It was the semester where we actually found out that he had a brain tumor, and I just couldn't. And I just said, I'm only gonna take one class, and I feel like it was yoga or something like that, you know. So all the other classes I just kind of, you know, dropped them, and I took yoga just to relax. And you know, I think that was a really great decision on my part, because then I was able to be in the hospital on a lot of days and be there with him. But yeah, so this all happened in 2014, and basically in 2015 we were told he wasn't getting any better, and we were told that he had however many months. And I think my mom, she didn't really want to like say exactly to us. I think we were told. I might be forgetting, you know, when traumatic stuff like that happen, you tend to like remember some things, not a lot of other things. So we were all like just kind of preparing, because you know, the tumor wasn't shrinking, and the essentially the chemotherapy and radiation is not a cure. Okay, so it does attack the cells, but it attacks all of your cells, so it makes you even more sick. But what essentially started happening was the tumor kept growing, and then he was getting more sick, and like other parts of his brain now had the tumor, to the point that his physical body had started to shut down. And you know, towards the end, he even needed a wheelchair. So at that time, I think he was done. I think he knew that it was time. So everybody was doing what they had to do, and you know, it was a lot. It was a lot to go through, but at the same time, it made us stronger as a family. And you know, we all were like, we would all cry together, we would all, you know. So towards the end, when we knew that like it just wasn't, you know, the day, it was like any day now kind of thing. You know, he had a like really high fever, and the day before, and my mom was like, everybody stay home tomorrow. And I was doing this internship at one of the congresswomen's office in my state, and I was also taking a Spanish class, and so I didn't go to class, I didn't go to my internship, we all stayed home. And you know, he had a really bad fever that day, and it was on a Friday, and it was in the morning, and you know, he had like one last breath. I think in his dying moment, I believe the two people by his side, my sister Jamila, my grandfather from my mom's side, and I think my mom was there too, but I'm not 100% sure. Like, this is what I remember: Jamila calling me, and I screaming for my mom, and her screaming for my brother. And then, you know, so we all came and we started to make prayer, because you know, he took his last breath, and so we all surrounded and we made dua for him. And for some reason, I think in that moment I went into, because you know, there's something called fight or flight, and I think I went into shock, or like, yeah, I just kind of was like, okay, let's make prayers, let me make these phone calls, because they're gonna have to wash his body, they're gonna have to take him to the mosque to do a prayer. And it's Friday, so I would love for him to get prayer, because it's a Friday, and so there's gonna be a lot of people at the mosque that can pray for him. I kind of just went into, this is what needs to be done right now. And I didn't cry. I didn't cry for days. It was very hard. I don't think my emotions were connecting with what was happening, but also at the same time, while he was sick, a lot of us were grieving, because we knew what was gonna happen one of those days. So yeah, I named my son after my dad. It's kind of like a version of his name. His name was Abu Bakr, and we all know the Prophet's companion's name was Abu Bakr al-Siddiq, so I'm using that part for my son. And I think maybe that's why I can actually talk about it now, if that makes sense. I don't know, maybe being a mother has given me like another level of strength, I don't know. But for anybody who's lost anybody, I pray for you. I hope you know, you're healing. You can never fully heal from that. I know I had a lot of people in my life that had lost. I actually have this really great friend that both of us lost our father, and she's literally like a sister to me, and if I didn't have her, I don't know how I would have coped with everything. So shout out to my sister Hadiza, I love you. So yeah, having somebody that has gone through the same thing can actually help, because it's another level of empathy that that person feels. Just if a person hasn't gone through that, they can truly sympathize with you and feel bad and give you a hug and cry, but feeling, I feel what you feel in this moment because I have gone through the same exact thing. It's just like it's another level. So yeah, please, wow, I actually didn't cry. I don't know what's wrong with me. Yeah, anyways, I might, if you have any questions, you know, about this, I can go into more detail. But yeah, thank you for watching, and you know, share, and you know, give somebody that has lost somebody a huge hug the next time you see them. And also, maybe I should do like etiquette of like what to talk about or what to say to people. Like, I felt like I know what I'm gonna talk about next. I'm gonna talk about basically how each person grieves and how that's different. Yeah, thank you so much for watching. Thanks for watching Rai Romina. Si Anjuma. Bye.